Hi, everyone. There's so many people here. I didn't expect this many people to come, honestly. But thank you, everybody who came out here. I know some of you guys are doing this for your homework folder points. Thank you, Dr. Earnhardt, for that. So first of all, welcome to our Student Press Freedom Day celebration. If you don't know me, my name is Molly Burke. I'm the editor-in-chief for the Jambar, and I'm going to be your MC today. I would first like to thank the Youngstown Press Club for allowing us students to put on this event. They kind of told us to just do whatever we wanted, so I hope we don't let you down. I would also like to thank our generous sponsors for making this event possible. Your donations and your willingness to support us means everything. So before we get into some presentations, I would like to talk about the importance of student press freedom. The Student Press Law Center educates students on their rights, provides resources, and advocates for organizations like the Jambar with legal and policy expertise. The center began Student Press Freedom Day 6 years ago, and the actual day this year was yesterday, but we're celebrating today. This year's theme is powerfully persistent. The center explains that the purpose of Student Press Freedom Day is to celebrate student journalists and our need for an independent press on our school campuses. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees our right to a free press. Nevertheless, this right has been challenged and sometimes denied throughout all of American history, especially for student journalists. Over 60 state and federal court cases have ruled it is unconstitutional to censor student presses on college campuses. We at Youngstown State enjoy this ability to report open and honestly. However, we are lucky compared to many school campuses, as student media and public universities are common victims of censorship. A 2022 study done by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression surveyed editors from newspapers at public universities and found that 63.8% of editors experienced at least one instance of censorship in the previous year. This often involved administrative requests to not publish certain content, with some experiencing threats of job loss to students and advisors. Students said the most censored topics involved administrative decisions, college personnel issues, college finances, and crime, especially sexual assault. Now, if there's anything I've learned from Dr. Mary Beth Earnhardt's communication law class, it's that these students likely had their constitutional rights violated. Student press freedoms are even more limited for high school students. In the 1988 case, Hazelwood versus Kohlmeyer, the United States Supreme Court ruled that high school administrations can censor student publications as long as they propose a legitimate pedagogical concern. The Student Press Law Center explains that this broad definition has led to some muddied waters for high school journalists, and some administrations have taken advantage of its vagueness to censor students when their words don't fit the admin's agendas. For instance, Teen Vogue reported in September last year that student journalists at Northwest High School in Nebraska were told their newspaper would be shut down following a Pride edition that discussed LGBTQ topics, including anti-LGBTQ legislation in Florida. Vogue continues, stating that an Arkansas high school administration ripped out every page of every single yearbook that included a timeline detailing the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And in Vermont, a high school newspaper was asked to remove an article that discussed professional misconduct from an administrative member. From John Peter Zenger to today's attacks on these students, journalists in America have been silenced for seeking the truth. Nevertheless, rulings like Hazelwood led the Student Press Law Center to advocate for students like us with its New Voices campaign, a student-led effort to solidify the rights of student journalists. In 1977, California became the first state to adopt New Voices laws, which guarantee public school students freedoms of speech and press. 17 states have adopted the New Voices laws, but unfortunately, Ohio is not one of these. While we have been fortunate to have an uncensored press at YSU, it's important to continue bringing awareness to these issues, as we must continue asserting our freedom and advocating for our importance. Since this past fall semester, YSU's campus has seen a high level of political unrest. We've had administrative changes and program cuts, and with that we've seen protests and petitions, walkouts, and rallies. Through every policy, every outcry, and every new change, the Jambar has been on the ground reporting and digging deeper. Thanks to the freedoms we are guaranteed in our Constitution, us students have been at the forefront of keeping this community informed. Not only do we deserve to carry out our passions unbothered and respected, but the public has a right to a free press. The public deserves a free press, and YSU needs a free press. A messenger, a watchdog, and a lifeline. Student Press Freedom Day is meant to celebrate student journalists, so the presentations you're about to hear are from students at the Jambar, the student voice of Youngstown State University since 1931, the publication that has served this campus for almost 100 years. So without further ado, I will introduce our first presentation today by our head copy editor, Betty Koss, who's going to talk to you about some of the news that the Jambar has covered throughout the years. Thank you.
If you will forgive me, I am learning how the little clicker thing works real quick. If it does. Oh, it seems she does not. If you could, John, if you could be my clicker. All right, so hi everybody. Like Molly said, my name is Elizabeth Koss, and I am the head copy editor at the Jambar, but many of you probably know that I have been involved with the Jambar for a lot longer, and it kind of feels like I've been here since 1931, as I am a fifth-year senior who will have a sixth year. But like Molly said, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Jambar has covered over the past couple years, but first we need to talk about what is news. So there's a couple different kinds of news, but today I'm going to be breaking down a lot of breaking news, actually. But within a news organization, you have a lot of regular news. Sports people, I'm sorry to out you here, but the basketball team on an away game, that is a common regular news story that you're going to see almost every week in the Jambar. However, we have had a lot of topical situations this year, like a congressman becoming a university president. That is not only topical on our university campus, but also locally. This is also a national story that we have had the honor to cover actually here. We have also had incredibly historical stories happen at YSU, including a historical fire in the Ward Beecher Planetarium once. But how can student journalists even possibly be the first source of news? How are we able to deliver breaking news? Well, simply put, we're hyper-local. We know the community, we know the people, we know this university better than anybody else. Whereas for other news outlets, we're very lucky that Youngstown is a highly populated area for a whole bunch of news coverage. But sometimes it's going to take them 10, 20 minutes to get here. And that's just for our area. For somewhere that might not be as hyper-central local to news, it's going to take them even longer to get there. So we know the area, we know the people, we know the facts, and we can break it down a lot quicker than a lot of other places. But why does university-centric news even matter? Like Molly had earlier discussed, we are constitutionally protected in a public service to provide you the facts and to provide you the details. These stories can often be drowned out in other news coverage because we're just a university. What does it matter? We do. That's the thing. So we're actively on the front lines here at the Jambar, highlighting and advocating for equal representation across multiple communities, across multiple areas. We're pressuring public officials and administration to get the facts and to tell you the important things that matter, that are happening to you as students, that are happening to you as faculty, and happening to you as staff and alumni, people in a community. You matter, and these stories matter. All right, so I pulled this quote off of the studentpressfreedom.org because I think it's super highly applicable, and I'm gonna read it. I have it on my phone real quick. Student press stories can cover a variety of issues, such as financial mismanagement, infrastructure issues within schools, COVID-19 and other local health concerns, instances of discrimination against teachers or students, abuse or violations within athletic programs, and leadership shortcomings among school officials and policy. And it might kind of sound a little bit crazy to say that the Jambar has been able to cover a number of those topics within the past couple of years. I'm not even talking within last year with a lot of the busy news that we've had. I'm talking within the past 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. We have had some heavy, hard-hitting stories. But how does the Jambar uphold those values and ideas? One more, John? I pulled a ton of stories. I love going through the archives. We have covered everything from basketball players being arrested, to anti-Asian discrimination on this campus, to psychology professors arrested, to an opioid crisis happening alongside a COVID-19 pandemic. These are real stories impacting real individuals, and our goal is to tell them. And these are highly representative news stories. But you might not necessarily think that those are always breaking news. So I also pulled some breaking news stories. We have had catastrophic events. I also still mourn the stolen puppy Lego, as many of you all do. That was a very long night in the office, and I'm glad he was safely returned. But then we have also had everything with Bill Johnson. We have been following that since day one, because that's what everybody has wanted to know about. We have also followed the entirety of the Ward Beecher situation. I was out there the second that I heard about it. Somebody thought a microwave had popped or something, and it was something so much more serious. And I'm so glad that we decided to go and cover that. And then I pulled a couple more that are a little older. Okay, thank you, John. So many of you may remember, some of you might not remember, but YSU also had a lockdown in 2018. It was a very serious thing. Somebody allegedly had a firearm. It was giant, catastrophic. The Jambar actively covered that. We had a Dana professor who was in violation of the discrimination and harassment policy for allegedly engaging in sexual relations with a student. That was a terrible story, and we were able to break a lot of coverage on that. And then some of you might remember, I didn't know this ever happened, but a car caught on fire in the M60 parking lot. And the photos were really cool, and we were able to cover that. And we have covered so many other important and hard-hitting topics throughout our history. If you go through our archive, we have a fantastic history of breaking news and developing news and representative news, and I am so proud of the Jambar and everything that has been able to uncover, and it'll continue to uncover. Thank you. All right, so next up, I would like to introduce the news editor, Christopher Gillette.
All right, guys. So as Betty mentioned, I am the news editor for the Jambar, and I put in two mini parts of this presentation just to talk about two things I think are important here. First, I was going to give an overview of collegiate journalism, and then I was going to go into how you can use skills from history in journalism. I, unlike my fellow Jambar staff, am not actually a journalism major. I'm a history major. However, history does tie to journalism. As Michelle Gatz would say, news is the first draft of history. So kind of go into the importance of collegiate journalism, just some elements of it. For one thing, we are hyper-local. Now, some of you guys may have encountered this term in your class. Essentially, it means that we focus specifically on YSU. Sometimes we'll go outside of it and go into the local community and do stories there, but we focus on YSU and we make stories YSU angled. Alongside that, colleges are communities. At YSU, you have tens of thousands of people here, whether in the form of students or faculty, plus hundreds of thousands of alumni and retirees and people who rely on this for their staff jobs and just holding up the local community at the same time. To go into actually a historic instance of the Jambar breaking news, about 50 years ago, the Jambar did some amazing investigative reporting and actually uncovered that the police chief was keeping an enemies list of people on campus. This included people who protested the Vietnam War, people who wrote critical letters to the editor. Even one example of a student who was just critical of the food on campus was put on that enemies list. So even in the past, the local news is incredibly important for uncovering scandals. And in this case, this just led to a massive scandal. And this was in the context of Richard Nixon falling due to Watergate and having his own enemies list uncovered. And we can see that today too. I mean, how many of you guys, I just want a quick raise of hands, have heard of what happened at Stanford recently? Well, for those of you who didn't, the Stanford College paper uncovered that the university's president had participated in some academic dishonesty with a research paper he'd written, forcing him to step down. So move on to the next slide, just to talk about some of the first university papers. The Dartmouth Review is actually America's first university paper, started about 1799. For the first 100 years, it was kind of inconsistent, but during the late 19th century and about the same time the Harvard Crimson was founded, it became really foundational and cemented in campus life. The Jambar itself was founded, as many of you may know, in 1931, and in the 21st century, news media has really expanded on all fronts. As you'll hear about later, Jambar TV was founded in 2019 and has had a successful almost 5 years at this point, 5 years in the fall, of course. Next slide. Oh. Now, I want to get into just the history skills here. One of the actually most important things you can do for a story is actually finding historical documents. Now, you can get those from many areas. I've relied a lot on university archives at YSU to find photos especially, but also other things. You can also rely on history professors, which I've done before as well, and you can rely on other archives, the local Mahoning Valley Archive, and this is something to keep in mind for your career. Your news organization that you work for probably has archives of their past articles and past photos. Now, there are many benefits to using like those historical archives. For one thing, photos. You can be very helpful for finding photos of a historical event, especially if you don't have it. You can find eyewitness accounts. You can find all sorts of things related to that. Next slide. There are some challenges that come with it, though. For one thing, you have to understand there's a difference between primary and secondary sources. I'll just give a quick rundown. It's just secondary is something that's already interpreted it. There are some other definitions, but you can also, another challenge is sometimes sources do not match, and you have to just pull the thread back all the way to the beginning with that. And you can also just find other challenges of just sometimes stuff isn't there, especially the further back you go. Though typically with journalism, you aren't going back more than, say, 50 years, and if you're going back further, you probably have an expert on hand that you can talk to. So I wanted to get in, next slide. Just some stories I've actually done with my expertise in history. Two prominent ones I did last fall. Now, to start on the left there, the top left picture and the bottom far left picture, those two people are actually related to former presidential candidate Ron DeSantis. The top was his grandfather, who played a prominent role in university administration. The bottom left was his father, who actually attended here as a student. And I did a story there, localizing a national event and relying on historical documents to just talk about his connection to YSU. While he had never attended here, his parents met sort of through here. His mother went to a nursing school nearby as well. You can see further to the right from that is a photo the Jambar actually took from our own archives. It's an empty chair photo, and it was when the president, Randy Dunn, actually announced he was leaving the university, and they got that great photo, which we were able to reuse recently, contextualizing stuff with the current president. Now, one more thing. I was just going to get to these two photos were actually ones I took. Last fall, I actually got the opportunity to meet and take photos of a former world leader, the Irish Taoiseach. Basically, their prime minister came to the university to get awards. I got a picture of him eating bread at the NVR right there, very nice. And I got a picture of him with Helen Lafferty right over there when they had dinner together. It was a very great experience there. And with that, I was also able to rely on my knowledge of Irish history and talk to a professor, David Simonelli, about knowledge of Irish history and the fact that he got the chance to interview Bertie Ahern, that was his name, about what he was getting awarded for. And I think that's it. All right, skipping questions because I got to move on here. I'm going to toss off actually to the next person, a line producer and works at WKBN, Cheyenne Gibbons.
Thank you, Christopher. Okay. So when it was presented to us through the Youngstown Press Club to do this day, it kind of was make this your own thing. And as a senior here at YSU and the previous editor-in-chief, I'm now taking the next step by working part-time at WKBN, which I'm very proud of, very thankful for all the opportunities that were given to me. So I decided also, if you don't know who I am, Gina Gibbons, and then also my second major is actually in philosophy, and I'm doing a directed reading right now that's focusing on the philosophical approach to journalism ethics, because that really interested me, and Michelle Gatz has a really great class on that. So when I was trying to decide on what I wanted to do for this topic, I was thinking about where I am right now in my collegiate journalism career, which is taking the next step. And then also, I really just was thinking about what the future is going to look like for collegiate journalism. A lot of this is about rights and freedoms that have been established in the past, and I kind of want to take a focus, and maybe it's a little more abstract than what other people's are going to be, but of how this could change and possible hardships that we might face in the future. And while I am going to be a senior and I am going to graduate, I think I'll always be a student in journalism. Next slide. So a lot of us, when we tell people that we're taking a degree in journalism or anything communications related, we're often met with statements that I have provided here on the screen. The book that I'm actually reading in my directed reading, I think every single chapter starts with journalism is a dying industry. But then at the end, they're like, this is how we can save it. So I just want to point out that these statements, they're not true. There is a huge future for journalism, and it's constantly evolving, whether that's going to be, essentially the media is going to constantly be changing and constantly be evolving, so that journalism is always going to be there. It will always be the fourth estate, and that recent revelations and scandals will constantly show the need for journalism. And then I put a little, we can thank former President Donald Trump for the increased interest in young people pursuing journalism. Next slide. Okay, and then Christopher kind of hit on something that was part of my slide, which was the Stanford Daily, Theo Baker. He actually, as Christopher said, reopened conversations surrounding the president's research, and that made the president resign. The next example I provided was Northwestern University firing its football head coach after the student newspaper exposed hazing within the team. I also provided the 4 student journalists that provided that. And then the Daily Tar Heel published an impactful front page after an active shooting. Emmy Martin, the EIC, collected text messages that students were sent and received while this was going on. Essentially, can you hit the next slide, John? So this is actually what the front page looked like. I think that does it a little bit more justice than me talking about it. But what I really wanted to provide with these examples is that even though people say it's a dying industry, this is a powerfully persistent career that students of all ages are going to actively pursue through the rest of our lives, and even beyond that. So I just wanted to show the great examples that student journalists can do and will do. Okay. So overall, statistics do show that the market is shrinking, but the trends in journalism and news consumption shift and change over time. But the need for these skilled journalists and communicators will never go away. While traditional media forms, especially in the professional sense, is slowly disappearing, journalism isn't, and it's constantly evolving. And that's why I really liked the topic or the theme today, which is powerfully persistent. Even though newspapers and traditional medias are going away, we're going to see that shifting towards websites and social media, and it's going to change. And then also, I wanted to talk a little bit about how basically adapting to the changes in journalism as it can and will continue to do, we may see like the shifts in curriculums as well. We constantly are taught newspaper and traditional media senses, but that is going to change within our lifetimes, and we need to be persistent in making sure that we give the most adequate journalism that we can. So then my next slide, I just wanted to talk about and kind of think about the new challenges that could be presented to students going forward with the different changes. So with the way that people consume media, it demands more all the time. Reporters have more responsibilities than they ever had before on tighter deadlines. And this is especially present when I became a part-time reporter for WKBN. It's constantly working and more responsibilities that you have to do that you didn't even think of. So that is always going to be a challenge. And shifting more towards social media, it's going to be more additional roles and responsibilities that we have to think about going forward. So moving on, like the new media will demand more, and actually we're seeing more of our consumers demand input and interpretation, which can leave us, young and student journalists, vulnerable to legal issues in ways that we didn't see before, as well as threats to credibility as a direct result of citizen journalists. But that doesn't mean we should outright gatekeep journalism. I just think that we should be more aware and think about the possible challenges that can come forward from that. So then I think the best way that we can do that is being aware of our rights as journalists and student journalists with even more limitations that can protect us from legal issues, but also the backlash that comes with being a journalist. So resources like the Student Press Law Center, the College Media Association, and our knowledgeable advisors and professors are all valuable resources for how we can protect ourselves. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dylan Lux, our executive producer, on how Jambar TV has evolved.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dylan Lux. I am the executive producer of Jambar TV currently and managing editor of the Jambar. I've had almost 2 years of experience now since MB recruited me from her imaging of media and design class. She saw me do some editing in Premiere and was like, you should work for Jambar TV. So I did. And that's what we're going to show you here today, is a little bit of my editing ability. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. I've been through Jambar TV, and we've talked a lot about the print format since we started this Student Press Freedom Day celebration. So this video is just a little tidbit into the development of Jambar TV and the broadcast format that we've done since 2019. So I'm going to let DJ Johnny O take it away over there.
Since the Jambar adapted into broadcast format to create Jambar TV in 2019, there have been many changes and improvements to the show, helping to keep viewers entertained and provide the best news coverage we can with the best presentation. So, without any further ado,
Welcome Week activities, the upcoming...
Today, we'll look at the first episode of Jambar TV and how it serves as a building block for... Whoa, hold on. Is that like a sheet of metal? Okay, I like the logo as much as the next guy, but I did not know that we were hosting a WWE match for our opening episode. Alright, let's skip forward a little bit. Before we had our lovely weather segment with all the pretty colors and such that you know today, we had an interview segment that featured a variety of guests, including president of the university at the time.
But before getting started with that, would you like to comment on the...
Jim Tressel made several appearances on Jambar TV in his presidency, and so did our TV monitors, which used to be used as over-the-shoulder graphics. I honestly don't hate the idea, it just looks like WKBN on a budget. Shout out to Cheyenne Gibbons, and even through it all, some things never changed.
Hey kid, you want to try some exercise?
So a lot of these factors remained a constant for Season 1, so now let's head to Season 2.
22 COVID-19 cases.
Okay.
One active case of COVID-19 at YSU.
Okay!
According to the YSU...
So the well-known COVID-19 pandemic definitely impacted Jambar TV and some of the development that came with it. Our anchors on desk would have to social distance, 6 feet apart, interviewees and reporters would often have masks and sometimes gloves on, and multiple other stipulations to make sure our reporters, anchors, and crew stayed safe. But I'm not here to haunt you with horror stories about COVID-19. We all lived through that for literal years. So let's take a jump up to Season 3 and debut...
This week on Jambar TV,
a new intro, a well-made one at that. The previous intros of Jambar TV were used in making advertisements for the communications department. At the beginning of the season, we still saw the same interview segment featuring Guess Who.
You know, I thought about when you introduced that we were going to be talking about the COVID
But,
calls.
breaking news. By the third season of Jane TV, we had over-the-shoulder graphics. Very well done by our producers and editors. Speaking of, also debuting thumbnails on the channel, giving the people another reason to maybe look twice at our channel or videos. On February 11th of 2022, just over 2 years ago, Jambar TV debuted the weather segment, which is still a part of production to date. So we look at the Jambar of today. It looked pretty similar to that of a few or so years ago, but with a few changes. One of the main changes being 3 live broadcasts at 3 different sporting events. A YSU basketball game on the road in Ann Arbor, Michigan against Michigan University, and 2 YSU football games. One being a playoff matchup at home against Duquesne, and the other being inside the Horseshoe at The Ohio State University, produced by yours truly and DJ Johnny over there. Each was its own incredible experience, and they helped the channel gain a lot of traction. 15 subscribers in one day from our Ohio State live broadcast. I cannot thank you all enough for your support. With all the changes and experiences we've had with Jambar TV, we will always look to continue improving by watching and learning from the experienced individuals around us and continuing to make each other better.
And hopefully it won't be cold. Hopefully.
Thank you to everybody, and I hope everybody enjoys our Student Press Freedom Day celebration.
All right, well, that's all of our presentations. So thank you, everyone, again, for coming to our celebration. I hope you enjoyed that. There was so many things that I learned today, too, that I didn't know about. Betty, you did an amazing job detailing some of our breaking news that we've covered throughout the years. Chris, talking about the historical importance of news as well and looking at that through your expertise as a history major. Cheyenne and I absolutely loved your presentation talking about the future for journalists, because it is extremely important to keep looking ahead as we look back as well. And Dylan, that video was absolutely amazing. Yes, take a picture of yourself. Take a selfie. That was stunning. I loved that. Your little WWE joke made me giggle. So with that, I just want to thank our sponsors again and thank the Youngstown Press Club again for letting us talk about ourselves, because we love when people pay attention to us, so thank you. And before I go away, I would like to share some more gratitude. First, for our business manager, Mary Doda, for helping us set up this event. Yes, Mary! Mary constantly puts up with us and allows us to run our business smoothly, and gives us cookies and keeps us warm and fed, and she's literally like our mother, so thank you, Mary. Thank you to Dr. Mary Beth Earnhardt, our chair of our department, and yes, thank you for making the Jambar very much possible for us and for allowing us to do this, and thank you for also putting up with us as well. Yeah, and thank you for bringing your class. Thank you to all the professors who are here who brought your classes. Yes. Yes, thank you. Because of you guys, we actually had an audience, so thank you. And thank you to the Jambar staff, to all of our reporters, producers, editors, our Jambar TV crew, our columnists, our only designer, Maddie, who did the flyer for this event. That was awesome. Yes, love the Jambar. You guys are all incredibly hard workers, and it's such an honor to work with you. And finally, I'd like to thank the Jambar's advisor, Michelle Gatz, for constantly being there for us and guiding us. Yes. Thank you for guiding us through the field of journalism as young professionals. You've been an amazing mentor and someone that all of us can look up to and rely on. I'm gonna cry. Okay, just a reminder also that the Jambar comes out every Thursday and Jambar TV comes out every Friday at noon. So make sure to check out this week's edition and watch the show. I scattered some Jambars on the tables too, so those are our little centerpieces. So pick up a copy of this week's, or those, I think there's a bunch of them there. So yeah, check out the Jambar. We work incredibly hard and we are so proud of what we do. So we have some refreshments in the back. There's some cookies and some brownies and some tea. Everyone's welcome to hang out for a bit. If you didn't get a button, are there any buttons left? No. Okay, well, if you didn't get a button, sorry. You were too late. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you everyone so much for coming out. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the beautiful weather.